Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. With the voice, Milt Thompson. Delivering the best of sports programming. Interviews with top celebrities. And the answer to the question, where are they now? And now, Milt Thompson, Playing for Keeps.
Welcome to Playing for Keeps. Yes, I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson, right here every Friday night on WHMB Channel 40. And what do we say about playing for keeps? That means all the goods are on the table, and we're going to go out and take advantage of those with the best sports celebrities and stars around. Not just on the field, not just on the court, just not on the diamond, but literally what goes on behind the scenes, what makes them tick, what makes them get to greatness, sometimes falling from greatness, sometimes falling from grace, and sometimes building back up where it is they've got the best things going on in the world. And that's the kind of story that we try to show. Whether it's a Horatio Alger story or not, rags to riches and then back to rags and back to riches again. Who knows where all that happens? But there's a long journey that everyone follows. I remember talking to the fireballer not too long ago, and he's Mark Patrick's son, right? I mean, and some people are talking to Gary Brackett and his rough times coming up and how it is he would do things and how they were inspired by that little chip on their shoulder. And so I said, you've had a gold spoon in your mouth, man. What was your? He says, sometimes that's a chip on your shoulder. You got to live up to things that people think you ought to be living up to, and maybe you're not. So there's always different inspiration that we find out about our guests on this show. First of all of you go out and participate and patronize our great sponsors here, especially Jiffy Lube. Go take care of them. They'll take care of you. And you know what? They take care of us here on this show here, Playing for Keeps. And, we're going to have another one of those great interviews this evening. And it's going to be with Mr. Hard Rock. A lot of people out there don't identify with the Hard Rock. They were talking about softballs and talking about pickleballs with Rick Witzkin here recently, but we're talking about the Hard Rock, the kind that we love. And you know what that means. We're going to do that with the great Dallas Williams. So we'll be right back here on Playing for Keeps.
Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube.
Welcome back to Playing for Keeps. I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson, right here on WHMB Channel 40. We're here every Friday night. You know that, Dallas? We're here every Friday night. People tune in and watch in, and they got to see the show because they want to see, who do we have next? I mean, are you going to have the ambassador back on? Are you going to have the indefatigable one back on? Or are you going to have the fireballer back on? No, not tonight. Tonight we got the Hard Rock, Dallas Williams. Dallas, welcome to our show.
It's been a long time, Milt. Great to be here.
It's always good to see a man here who was drafted by the same team we were drafted by way back in the day. Tell me, 1976?
Yes.
How'd I know? Yes. Anyway, we're talking about the great Hard Rock and the Hard Knock. And you hard knock with hard rocks, right? People don't know what we're talking about, do they, Dallas?
They don't, but I do.
Tell us what we're talking about.
Well, we're talking about the way we hit that ball. We lived the hard life as well. But Hard Rock, Hard Knock, you name it, hard stick ball.
Yes.
It's a whole bunch of words with hard in the beginning of it, but
hard
I
is
can identify with all of them.
How we rode, and the harder you hit it, the harder sometimes it felt like you got cheated out of life.
And don't forget about hard living as well.
Hard living. Well, I mean, sometimes the harder you hit it, and you hit it right at somebody, you seem like I'm not living right.
That's right.
I don't hit a ball that hard and still have that trot back over there to the dugout. That is not work.
No reward for that. That was frustrating, but nevertheless, is what you did and what you expected.
And we even called the game Hard Rock.
That's for sure.
And the reason why you have to play early because you cannot grow up afraid of that hard rock. If you grow up with hard rock, you'll never be able to play competitively.
That's a fact. Growing up in Brooklyn, New York, as some might not know, I wasn't introduced to a baseball field until I was, say, maybe 9, 10 years old. So we played softball turned into hardball on concrete. We played with a baseball on concrete, so you had to have no fear with that, situation.
Hard rock on hard surface.
Hard rock on concrete.
Right.
And we got to the point where the ball was so messed up, we only had one. You taped the ball up with black tape. Exactly. I'm sure you know.
Right.
And we just kept it going, and we played as long as we can, for as long as we can with that ball.
Well, people don't understand is the great passion, and one of the reasons why I was a founder of the Play Ball Indie program, which was the RBI program, Reviving Baseball in the Inner Cities. And Michael Wilbon and I were on a panel together talking about why don't young black kids play baseball anymore? That's a hard question, particularly coming up when we came up and all the great stars that we saw.
Absolutely.
So tell us about your upbringing, how you even got introduced to baseball other than on a concrete surface.
You know, my brother who's passed away, rest in peace, Charles Mickey Williams, he introduced me to the game, but it was softball. Because like I said, we didn't have the facilities or the means of playing on a baseball field. And, you know, the way things were back there in Brooklyn, New York, it was a little bit difficult to get on a baseball field as a young black kid.
Right.
So we did what we could, and he introduced me to it. And then in my elementary school years, a man by the name of Kevin Peters, who was not an African-American guy, he, I guess, saw the skills that I had and introduced me to different people that put me in position to get on the baseball field. And once I got on the field for the first time, I fell in love and said I never want to step off of it. So that kind of got me going and fed my hunger for baseball.
It's a passion, a thing. People don't understand. They say, well, it's not really, it takes an athlete to play baseball. That's a skill. No, they're missing out terribly when they don't understand that.
That's right. That's a fact. You know, and a lot of people say, you know, of course you have to be a good athlete to play, especially the higher up you get. But, you know, the better athletes are your basketball players and your football players. Baseball players are not just well-rounded athletes. They're just well-skilled in certain areas of a baseball game. So you don't have to be an athlete, but you have to have the passion because it's very difficult to hit a round baseball with a bat. So, you know, it takes some passion.
Hand-eye coordination.
Hand-eye coordination. And like I said,
that's being athletic.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, but having to you know, dodge guys running at you.
You got to run.
250 pounds, yeah, but having guys that come at you and knock you to the other side of the moon.
You got to be able to take it.
Exactly.
And get back up.
Baseball, you kind of can avoid that part of it. But
you can.
Nevertheless, that's right.
Have you ever been taken out?
I have not. I'm glad I haven't. But it's been, you know, it's just the way it is. You just got to be ready to play the game and love it and go for what you know with it.
But it's not one where it is you can just naturally intuit. You have to be able to learn it. You have to be taught it, have to be coached it.
Right.
And then even when you take the coaching to it, it's a game of losing. You're not going to be successful every time at bat.
That's
300 in the Hall of Fame.
That's right, 300 in your Hall of Fame. 7 times you're making it out. You know, I remember in the days as a kid watching the New York Mets. I was a diehard Met fan back in the late 50s, early 60s.
Right.
When we'd have to watch it with my grandfather. And, you know, I watched Cleon Jones and Ed Kranepool and Tommy Agee, guys like that, and Tom Seaver pitch.
Right.
And I said, man, those guys look like they're, not only are they, you know, look good, but they're having fun out there. And I said, that looks like something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And I was fortunate, you know, to get to a certain point where I could say that I was one of those guys that got to that level.
Yeah, well, talk about those days after the hard rock days in Brooklyn. What led you on to more organized ball from those days? Well,
going to high school, I went to high school in Brooklyn, New York. Lee Mazzilli, as you might remember, the center fielder for the Mets, we went to the same high school. He graduated in '73, and I came right in behind him. So high school baseball back then was up and coming a little bit. They had a couple of guys that played, you know, well, obviously Sandy Koufax, those guys, you don't count those guys, but you know, Mazzilli and I brought the love of baseball back into my era, back into the late 70s, late 70s, and I know it's still going strong now. You've had Manny Ramirez come out of there, and Johnny Franco, a couple other guys, but you know, in high school, we played all around. We had to take the train in a city bus to places in your uniform. You come home after playing 2-3 games, and your mother throwing you in the tub with seemed like it was light or water. It was so hot. But you know, we just we found a way to get it done. High school was the way that paved my way to get to a level where I was, you know, fortunate enough to be drafted.
You just figure out a way to get your skill set up.
Absolutely.
And usually do that by playing against good competition.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Tell us about some of the competition that you had early on that led you to be the hard knock, hard rock.
You know, again, growing up and playing in sandlots in Brooklyn, there was a lot of, I guess cutthroat is the best way to
Right.
say it. Guys wanted to get to where, everyone wanted to get to the big league. So they do whatever they can. And, sometimes playing in not the greatest facilities, in the greatest conditions, listening to people call you different names and, being one of the minorities to I was usually one of two, if not the first, only one African American on the team. So, I got in and separated that from, the stuff that I had to deal with and said, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I think about what Jackie Robinson had to go. Mine doesn't even compare not one iota to what he had to go through. So I said, if he did it back then, he did it to give me an opportunity to do it, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away. So just coming up in New York, Brooklyn, New York, and playing in the boroughs and going to different situations made me a tougher player and more determined.
Well, we kind of grew up watching the Willie Mays and Hank Aaron's and the guys like that were obviously great black players. But and I spent some time with Hank Aaron in his later days, and we would always talk about, and he just seemed to have a little chip on his shoulder. It was a little bit bitter.
Yeah.
So, and I'd say, what's up, Hank? He says, these guys today don't understand history.
Absolutely.
He said the most money I ever made in 1 year, and even at this time, was a couple $100,000.
Wow.
And those guys make a couple $100,000 a game.
Yes.
And that they don't even recognize the people that are from them.
Yes.
Who are the guys you looked up to, Hard Knock? Who did you look up to?
You know what? Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. Mickey Mantle was
a great New York player.
Probably my favorite.
Your favorite, a lot of people.
So talented, and when you talk about that, and especially when I go to black venues and talk about baseball, and and once or twice I might mention Mickey Mantle as being my favorite player, and they say,
you guys
Willie
don't know
Mays,
how good
of
that
course,
dude was.
yeah. But that guy was a great player, and I wasn't looking at him because he was white or black. He was a baseball player
and a great athlete too.
And a great athlete.
Could outrun anybody.
He could do it all.
Outthrow anybody, and could out-hit anybody.
Right. So
I actually had him on one of my prior television shows, Mickey
Really?
Mantle, when he was here doing some old-timer baseball things back in the day. By that time, he's getting a little bit ill. But Roberto Clemente, and I mean, this names of people that just had some greatness going on that we looked up to.
Absolutely.
It says, how do we emulate them? We're going to talk about your professional career with the hard rock, hard knock, Dallas Williams, when we come right back here on Playing for Keeps. We'll be right back.
Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube.
Welcome back to Playing for Keeps. Yes, I am your host, The Voice, Milt Thompson, and talk about another voice. We got another voice here. The Hard Knock over here apparently has a great voice. We're going to have to figure that out on a duet one of these days here, and I might have him do the baritone part and I do the bass part. We might switch it up. You never know what we're going to do, but he's the Hard Rock, so the Hard Rock will get to do what he wants to do. Dallas Williams, welcome to our show again, and we were talking about your amateur playing days of playing the Hard Rock, the great baseball, and people that we looked up to, and how we're going to figure out, and you get a passion for this game that other people don't quite understand, especially these days when there's so many other alternatives. Guys that are playing basketball, because it takes just a basketball and you go run, and playing baseball. If you weren't playing stickball or playing on concrete, you couldn't play. You didn't have any facilities to go and play. But you had determination. You said, I love this, so I've got some passion and determination. I think I can get to the next level. Tell us about how that next level happened to you, where it led you after the draft, what happened, and where'd you play, how'd you play, and with whom did you play?
Well, I was drafted in '76, as you mentioned, by the Orioles, and went through the minor league system. '76, I was in Bluefield. Went
Virginia,
through Miami, then Charlotte. Did you play in Bluefield? What about that?
See, I was
stadium?
second phase draft. See, you were
Right.
superstars.
Okay,
You know.
well, when I went to Charlotte, Rochester, and I first got to the big leagues for my cup of coffee in '81. That was with Cal Ripken, Palm, and all those guys. Eddie Murray, they were all on the team. So my time in the big leagues wasn't a lot, but nevertheless, I got there.
That cup of coffee
Exactly.
smells so good, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Traded to the Reds after the '81 season and came here to Indianapolis. Played in '82 and '83. That's where I met my beautiful wife of 39 years. And after I got called up by Cincinnati, I was later traded to the Tigers organization, spent a couple months there and went back to Rochester and finished up basically in the United States for the first part. Then I went to Japan for a year and then came back and played a little bit more and then started my coaching career.
Well, we talk about our Indianapolis Indians, and I have the honor of still serving on their board of directors here locally. And when you came through, there were some pretty good ball players even here and there. Tell us about the position you played and how you played and with whom you played.
Okay, in '82 I was the center fielder, and I played alongside Gary Reedus. Dwayne Walker was on the team. Nick Yasaski, Foley, Lawless, and there's a bunch of the guys got to the big leagues for some significant time too.
Right.
So I was fortunate enough to play with those guys. In the Expo days, I played with my good friend to this day, Razor Shines, Mike Smith, a good pitcher, and you know, like you said, Indianapolis has produced or put some pretty good baseball players in the city here, and we've had some pretty good championship teams. I got 3 championships with them. So I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where I was with some good teams and a good bunch of guys.
You know, folks don't recognize that. Some people say, "Are you guys going to get a pro team in Indianapolis?" I said, "Huh? What?" I think we do, right?
Exactly.
I think we do. Professional baseball is professional baseball,
That's right.
And there might be different levels of play and different areas that you go. But professional baseball is to make a living, right?
Absolutely.
That's what you do.
That's right.
And tell people about that aspect of it that you got trained for earlier on, about how I'm going to pour not only my heart and soul into the hard rock, but how am I going to make a living and do that?
You know what, Milt? To be honest with you, I'm one of the guys, and I know there's a lot of guys like me who really never thought about making a living to play. You just played because you played and you loved the game.
Right.
Once I got to the point where my wife, you know, and then I had babies.
Right.
You know, my son, who by the way played a couple years in the minor leagues with the White Sox, and my daughter, who was a great athlete at Pike High School and could have done some other things had she wanted to stay in sports. But, you know, after I had my kids, I said, you know, well, I got to continue a way to, you know, to support my family. You know, it's not only me, it's them. So that put my perspective into another area. And that was towards the end of my playing career. And I was fortunate enough to get a job as a coach in the minor leagues and further a career myself.
Tell us about that coaching career and what it takes to do. And people think, well, all of a sudden you're a coach and you're a manager of a major league team and there's nothing else in between. Or nothing can be further from the truth.
Not even close. You know, when I went, I left Japan and came back in 87, 88. And I joined the Cleveland Indians organization for the finishing out the year. And then 89, I went to Kinston and back to rookie ball before I went to the White Sox for 10 years in the minor leagues. But by no means is it easy. You know, you had to go out there and be there for the players. Now it's about them, not about you anymore.
Right.
As a coach, you know, you have to be there for them, and that was easy for me to do because I always appreciated the work that the coaches gave me when I was coming up. So it was easy for me to reciprocate and give that back to the players. So, you know, it's not an easy job. If you want to do it, obviously you have to have some kind of ability.
Right.
And you also have to have the determination and the love that you had as a player as well.
Right.
So, you know, I don't take it for granted if you're listening or watching this interview and you want to get into professional coaching. Don't think it's something where you just say, okay, I'm going to go get a job and I'm going to get to the big leagues. I'm going to do this and that. It's not even close to being that. It's a lot of hard work. You have to love what you're doing and appreciate the opportunity that will be given to you.
Well, there's so much pecuniary interest in the sport now. Money drives and talks everything. And I remember talking to one of the great football analysts of the world, Rick Venturi. People know about him locally, and he was an assistant coach when I first played. He was a neighbor of mine, so we'd sit down there and talk. And he said, "Look, you represent professional athletes," and I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, you're a great assistant football coach, and what's going on with that?" He just says, "You know, there's baseball players, basketball players, football players. You know what they all have?" I said, "What?" He said, "They all have agents." And you know what head coaches have in football? You know what they have? They have agents.
Yeah, of course.
Says, "You know what assistant coaches have? Their spouse."
That's right.
And
That's right.
someone to help you change a house. Because you're going to move.
That's right.
And you have no one else that's going to represent that interest.
Right.
So people don't understand that money drives all these sort of things. And then coaching at the quote-unquote minor league level goes with the hard knocks of those that are being paid at the minor league level.
No question.
You know, there's a 40-man roster that those people may be at the minor league level, but they're also on the major league level of pay.
Yes.
So when they come back to play with the Indianapolis Indians, they may be playing with some 6-year free agents, and they may be playing with a bonus baby who's making a couple $1 million, and they're making $60,000, right?
Absolutely.
So and you got to deal with those kind of egos.
Yes.
When you're coaching at that level. Tell me how you do that, being a coach and skill, but being a psychologist too.
You know, I was a first-round pick, as you know, and I was looked at as a bonus baby. You know, I did receive a nice, pretty good sum as a draftee. But you know, coaching them, I like I said, I used to coach every player as they made minimum wage.
Right.
You know, because if you start favoritism towards a guy, and believe me, in some cases there is.
There is.
As you know. But, you know, I tell the guys, hey, man, we're going to work as hard as this guy. You all try to reach one common goal. So if you think that you're going to get better treatment because you're this guy and this guy's working as hard, not going to happen for me.
But there's some politics in that you just have to admit that comes down from on high, right? You know, you play that guy because he's on an injury rehab, and we want to get him back up here more quickly. So you want to play him a little bit more than you play the guy over there. He may have some talent, but I'm not sure he's going to make it back up to that level.
No question.
So how do you manage that? With the egos that those folks have, and it's also someone you say, he's working his tail off. He needs to be in there.
You know what? As you said, there is that coming from the up top, and they say, you know, this guy has to play. You know, he has to play because coming down here, trying to get back up there to help the big team. So we don't preach it. We know it has to happen.
Right.
His name will be in the lineup if he's healthy enough to play every day. So it kind of goes without saying. But you know, those guys, they don't want to be treated any different when they come to the minor leagues.
So it is a promotional league at the minor leagues.
Absolutely.
Very few of them make it. A lot of them don't get that cup of coffee that you had.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But they're striving to get that cup of coffee.
That's right.
How do you keep them motivated, other than if they just love the game like you did?
Well, I always tell them, your dream has to be your dream. If you stop, then you might as well quit. If you stop dreaming, we always coach them like that. They're all going to get to the big leagues. So I didn't really look at this guy, hey, this guy's going to be going home in a couple of weeks, as we know they were. Always releases, always guys that would, you know, go home. And some didn't deserve to go home. But you never looked at him like saying, this guy's not going to make it, so we're not going to give him the attention. We gave everybody our undivided attention, or at least I did. In my heart, I gave him the best that I could give him.
From the streets and the hard concrete of Brooklyn to the ivory towers of coaching and baseball playing. But we want to thank Mr. Hard Knock Dallas Williams for being on our show. We're playing for keeps, my brother. We're playing for keeps.
Well, thank you.
We'll be back here next week for another fantastic version of Playing for Keeps. We'll see you then.